Alex Kliment here from GZERO Media. I'm pleased to be joined today by Danny Rogers, an assistant professor at New York University and co-founder of the Global Disinformation Index, a nonprofit that tracks disinformation on the web.
Thanks for having me.
I want to start, Danny, by just asking you to explain a little bit about what you do and how you do it.
Well, what we do is we're a relatively new nonprofit that exists to catalyze change within the tech industry to disincentivize the creation and dissemination of disinformation online. So we do that through a variety of projects. We have an intelligence function where we track various adversarial narratives and examples of disinformation in various themes across the web. We work with platforms, governments, ad tech companies, and other partners to try to really get ahead of this problem.
So you will call up, say, Facebook or Google and say, hey, guys, there's some disinformation here you might want to take a look at and take down. You'll go to that level of specificity, or how does it work?
We've worked with the platforms before to say, for example, hey, here's a bunch of, we're tracking, we just put a blog post up recently tracking various coronavirus-related disinformation, on the open web, and calling out, here are all the ad tech companies that are, subsidizing this stuff inadvertently, and then working with those ad tech companies to demonetize that content.
Are they responsive?
Sometimes, yes. It depends on the situation, but I think fundamentally there's a business model conflict that we're always coming up against, where it's more, especially at the platform level, there's a strong trend to maintain sort of quote neutrality. There's a strong business incentive for them to try to kind of spread the monetization tools and the platforming tools as far and wide as possible, and I think we're seeing the consequences of that now.
You've spoken of the coronavirus crisis as the Superbowl of disinformation. Can you explain a little bit about what you mean by that?
So you have everyone coming out of the woodwork, from the sort of lower level, people peddling bunk cures, people exploiting the chaos at the geopolitical level, and even people in centralized authoritative positions, putting out disinformation of their own. And so it's really testing the limits of all of the interventions. And we're seeing the platforms try harder, I think, because, like I said, no one's on the side of the virus here. And so, platforms are definitely taking more aggressive action than they've taken in, say, the political sphere. But it's also calling into or putting into relief the limitations of the things the platforms have been capable of, in terms of playing whack-a-mole with the different conspiracy theories and different pieces of content. The people I know who are working in that space are working harder than ever, and still very much behind.
So I want to ask you a little bit about the specific. You touched on this a bit, but what are the different kinds of disinformation that we're seeing right now?
Yeah, sure. So I think it's sort of maybe two or three different categories. One is obviously the bunk cure stuff. The people are out there saying if you drink this bleach solution or take that vitamin C pill, you're safe, et cetera. People have used to blow a hairdryer up your nose.
Of doing that. So you hold a blow dryer in front of your face and you inhale with your nose, and it kills all the viruses in your nose.
I should not use a hairdryer to cure myself of coronavirus.
I would advise, I'm not a medical professional, but I would probably advise against it.
Good. Speaking from an appropriate social distance, I appreciate it. Thank you.
Well, but I think that's certainly one massive category, and the platforms have been relatively aggressive. I think not as aggressive as I would like them to be, but relatively aggressive about going after some of that stuff, because the obvious risk of harm is there, right? If people are, say, taking vitamin C and thinking they're protected, then going out into the world and contracting it, spreading it, et cetera, it's very clear kind of what the implications are there. I think the other category is kind of the people who are weaponizing the conspiracy theories around this. So, whether where it emerged, what the whether it was intentional, et cetera, are being used at both the geopolitical context in between kind of national or state level actors to sort of pin the blame on different sides and different rivalries. But also, most unfortunately, to inflame or exploit kind of racial tensions, right? We've seen even this today and this past week, people using this as an excuse to commit, racist acts of violence, et cetera, which is, I think, one of the most unfortunate categories of this kind of stuff where it's being weaponized in that sense. And then, I think there's just the people who are exploiting it to create general chaos and mass terror, and jumping on that bandwagon. And we've seen examples of, various, say, white nationalist actors, et cetera, sort of saying, oh, here's our chance to sow more confusion, to commit acts of violence, et cetera. And definitely been some well-documented examples of that too.
Danny Rogers, co-founder of the Global Disinformation Index, thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.